All right, we ready to rock and roll? We're ready to rock. All right. Well, my name is Blake. I'm one of the residents here. Thanks for showing up. And thanks for, this great weather. It kind of sucked being inside all week. All I could do is watch movies. So, what else are you going to do? Get soaked? I know, terrible. It's awful, but it's what I did. I decided to watch the classics, the cult classics this week. So I watched The Karate Kid. I'd never seen The Karate Kid, but it was a great movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like it ended abruptly, but we all know The Karate Kid. It's Danny LaRusso comes to California, the Valley area, and he meets this rotten egg Johnny Lawrence and his Cobra Kai goons. Johnny trains at the Cobra Kai dojo, and these guys are just straight up evil. These guys are no good. When they're like thrown a punch, they just chant "kill" over and over again, which is kind of awful to go up against that. So, yeah, pretty bad dudes. But Danny is continuously bullied by Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai until one night when he's just beaten, I don't know, by his house. Mr. Miyagi, the wax on, wax off guy, finds Danny and turns him into his student. And in making Danny his student, he just asks that Danny would just do all the waxing on, the waxing off, the sand the floor, the paint the fence, the paint the house, etc., etc. And so this ends up teaching him karate, and he, in the meantime, enters into the Valley Karate Tournament to get the run back with Johnny Lawrence. And slowly, Danny is learning karate from Mr. Miyagi. He learns the crane kick on his own, testament of skill, on his own from just watching Mr. Miyagi do it. He was never actually taught the crane kick, but he just did it. So flash forward to the Valley Karate Tournament, and Danny is making it through the ranks. He's beating these Cobra Kai fellas until it's the finals, Danny versus Johnny, right? It wouldn't be a good movie if it wasn't the big hero versus the big villain. So we got Danny versus Johnny, match point. Danny has basically a broken knee from the previous round. So he poses up and does the crane kick that he learned just by watching him do it. And he beats Johnny Lawrence. Danny took his training seriously and was able to beat a far more experienced Johnny Lawrence from the result of his training. And I think the fun thing with movies is that we get to play the what if game. Like we can think about what if something else happened, like what if the Titanic didn't sink in Titanic? So we can think like, what if Danny didn't care to learn karate? Like if he watched Mr. Miyagi do all this waxing on and waxing off, bounce on the boat, paint my fence, and just went, yeah, and then went home. Like that's all he did. Like it'd be kind of a bad movie. I wouldn't want to watch that. If Danny was apathetic about his training and showed up to the Valley Tournament, Danny would have died. He would have basically gotten laid out flat almost instantly. He would not have beaten Cobra Kai, but we want Danny to beat Cobra Kai. We want our heroes to win. So Danny had to care about his training, or Cobra Kai would have won. See, I think sometimes in the Christian life we can have an apathy problem. We can be apathetic about living out our faith. There's times where we just wake up and don't feel like it. We don't feel like doing it. We can hear the good word, go to church, nod along to the message, raise our hands in worship, and then go home and call it good enough. We can just get caught into the rhythm of our lives. But just like Danny LaRusso went up against Cobra Kai, we have to go up against an enemy. See, our enemy Satan would love it if we didn't care about our faith. And sin would have the easiest time creeping into our lives. And the sin in our lives keeps us from a further enjoyment of a good and loving God. Without care for our faith, we don't tend to dwell on how much Jesus showers us, the grace and how much he loves us. And it's so easy to slip into that mindset. It's tragic. Even the most experienced Christian can slip into apathy. But luckily, if you're feeling apathetic tonight, James isn't going to leave us out to dry. Tonight, he's going to go to war against our problem of apathy and show us what it looks like to fight against apathy. So we're finishing out James 1. So if you'll turn to James 1, 19 and 27, we'll start there. So, my dear brothers and sisters, I can raise this actually, I don't have to lean over. My dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. For human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Therefore, ridding yourselves of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, humbly receive the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like someone who looks at his own face in a mirror. For he looks at himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of person he was. But the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom and perseveres in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer who works, this person will be blessed in what he does. If anyone thinks he is a religious without controlling his tongue, his religion is useless and he deceives himself. Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. So here, James is imploring us to take what we find in Scripture and actively live it in our lives, to put that into practice. And furthermore, he also tells us what this practice yields in the life of the believer. So let's hone in on that first chunk there, verses 19 through 21, where it goes, "My dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger, for human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. Therefore, ridding yourselves of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, humbly receive the implanted word, which is able to save your souls." I think the key word there is humbly, because that's our first point in our fight against apathy. It's that Christians who fight their apathy are humble. Christians who fight their apathy are humble. See, humility in the Bible is described as being meek or having an absence of the self. The person who's humble isn't absorbed in who they are, what they do, or what they can accomplish. They're not impressed by these things or anything like that. It's the opposite of pride. The humble know that they are lowly and in need of grace. They're not the center of the universe. But what does that humility look like? Well, right out of the gate, we get, "My dear brothers and sisters, understand this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger." This is James talking, and James is the brother of Jesus Christ himself. And James refers to the church as dear brothers and sisters. The way he speaks is indicative of his humility. See, he could have lorded the fact that he was related to Jesus over the church. He could have used that to impose some sort of wacko power over, I don't know, like a tyrant or whatever, to be like, this grants me some sort of strange right to lord over you. But no, he doesn't do that. He does not count anything to make himself better than anyone else. And as James practices humility here by speaking, he continues to advise us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And why do any of that? For human anger does not accomplish God's righteousness. You see, effective and practiced humility yields morally upright behavior in the Christian. In other words, when we slow down, think of ourselves less, and use our ears, we begin to behave more like Christ, more like our teacher. Doing this, we adopt an attitude of servitude rather than superiority. And when we are slow to speak, it is much harder to be quick to anger. So, for example, say you're like driving around the Coral Ridge Mall. You're going to Old Navy or H&M to get some linen pants because it's hot out, and you don't want to wear shorts because you feel like a toddler when you wear shorts, so you want to go get those pants. So you're driving to H&M, Old Navy, and you're in the left lane, and somebody's in the right lane, pretty much right next to you. And then say this person makes an unmarked, sharp left turn to get to the JCPenney. We got two reactions. We can be super angry, we can yell, we can, prattle off a bunch of unkind things, I don't know, a curse word or two, I don't know. You can think you're Dale Earnhardt driving around the Coral Ridge Mall, that you're better than them over something so minor. Or you cannot do that. You don't have to yell at them. You don't have to think you're Dale Earnhardt. You don't have to live by the first angry thought in your brain. Because living under our own anger and rampant thoughts hamstrings the good that God can do through the believer. It ignores the grace that was shown to us. And so we can ask again, why? Classic toddler question, why? Why should I be humble? Why? I hear that I should be humble. Why should I do it? It seems like there's 1,000 other reasons, 1,000 other ways to curb my anger. I could go for a run. I could read a book. I could listen to music. I could find a yogi and do yoga. I could do, whatever. But James tells us that humility does more than just curb our anger. He goes on to say, therefore, ridding yourselves of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, humbly receive the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. See, humility is unique in the fact that it postures our heart to receive salvation. In our humility, we come to terms that we can't run our own lives by our own power. See, it runs out. We get tired. We lash out. We live in that moral filth. All the running, all the yoga, whatever, is going to hit a point to where it's not going to be able to have any power over us. We're going to go beyond it and need more. We're going to need humility. See, in humility, we look to the living word, Jesus, who offers grace upon grace to the Christian life. The life of the Christian is met with unfathomable amounts of grace. And living under this grace means we act like Christ. We leave behind our old passions and do as Christ does. We do as our teacher does. So in middle school, I started getting into soccer. I know it's like, FIFA right now, right? I started getting into soccer because I kept breaking my neighbor's fence, kicking a soccer ball into it. got yelled at a lot. It was pretty rough. It was pretty bad. My mom yelled at me, my neighbor yelled at me, so I needed to find an outlet. So I decided to join the soccer team. So I showed up, I played, I got better, learned the basics, Finally stopped kicking soccer balls at my neighbor's fence, stopped putting holes in it, stopped getting yelled at, but I never really got good at it. I was just passable for a sixth grader. But I was fascinated by the bicycle kick. It was like the Maserati of soccer moves, if you could be able to do that cool backflip thing. I thought that was the sickest thing ever. I wanted to do it so bad. But yeah. So in the middle of a game, I decided in the middle of a game to do it. I was like, tonight, this is the moment. This is the moment to do the bicycle kick. There's really no stakes. This is a middle school soccer game. I decided, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. And so it seems like the stars aligned for me to do this bicycle kick. I'm in position for the goal. The ball is lofted over to me. I see it. I jump for it, and then I wake up on the ground because I knocked myself out. Woke up. It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing as a 6th or 7th grader could be embarrassed. But why didn't I practice the bicycle kick? If I wanted to do it, I would have practiced it. I never once went outside of practice to find a soccer field to practice going through the motions to learn this kick. I didn't sink in any hours. Probably took a lot, but I wouldn't know because I didn't do that. See, the idea that only practicing at practice was going to get me to do the bicycle kick is foolish. I didn't actually care to learn. See, James is going to challenge the idea of practicing only at practice, starting in verse 22. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. Because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like someone looking at his own face in a mirror. For he looks at himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of person he was. But the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom and perseveres in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer who works, this person will be blessed in what he does. So the second point of the night here is that Christians who fight their apathy are disciplined. We are called to take the implanted word from verse 21 and to do it, to live it out when it goes, be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. We got to act, or we're lying to ourselves, We've misused the grace. See, when I tried to do the bicycle kick, I was deceiving myself into thinking that just by looking at someone doing the kick or hearing about it or hearing about how cool it was, that I too could do that without any sort of effort put in. I was just being lazy. See, the Christian that takes their faith seriously and wants to fight their apathy understands that just as we listen to the word, we put it into practice. And what does that look like? Luckily, James tells us, because if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he's like someone looking at his own face in a mirror. For he looks at himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of person he was. But the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom and perseveres in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer who works, this person will be blessed in what he does. See, in Christ, in our new identity, we become doers. That's what we do. We're doers. When you listen and learn from a teacher, you eventually do the things the teacher does. You become more like your teacher. And as we learn from Christ and dive into his word, we begin to listen intently and speak slowly and not give in to our angers. Christians do what Christians do because they're Christian. And that's your new identity. We got to do what Christians do. But it's hard. It's so hard. Nobody gets this overnight. This takes time, so much time and effort. It says the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom and perseveres in it. See, the key word here is perseveres. Discipline takes time and patience, doing something over and over again. It sounds like insanity. It's like a diamond under pressure. If I'd actually gone out to a field and practiced the motions over and over again to learn the bicycle kick, I wouldn't have knocked myself out. I think I would have been able to stay conscious through the whole thing. We might have won the game. I don't think we actually won that game, but things could have been different if I actually practiced. But discipline is not taking a brief glance at yourself and then calling it good and then rushing out the door. You'd forget after a bit because you didn't actually take time to look. See, to be disciplined, we have to sit down, slow down, and look for a while, a good while. We have to put forward continuous effort to fight our apathy. And in our perseverance, we're again met with grace upon grace because we're not perfect. We need the grace of God to persevere in our discipline. We're going to mess up. It's just a part of life. And if we don't do any of this, we're just deceiving ourselves that we think we can do it. If we think, I hear it, great, I can go, I can do all the Christian things without needing an ounce of grace. You're lying. We're going to mess up. We're going to lull ourselves into a lukewarm faith filled with pride and arrogance, one that doesn't display or live out the hope we know. And it's tough to be disciplined. Nobody likes that. I didn't like getting yelled at by my neighbor or my mom for doing something wrong. I didn't like that at all. And it seems like it's a little out of reach sometimes, that destination. And it can be boring, and it can be monotonous if it's hard to see the outcome of perseverance. We start to lose our motivation to even get up and do it. Discipline gets harder and harder. But James gives us the best reminder for when we feel bogged down in discipline. Read that last bit with me. But the one who looks intently into the perfect law of freedom and perseveres in it and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer who works, this person will be blessed. You see, in our disciplines and practices, we are blessed. In the word here, it's makarios. It can translate to happy or privileged. And that can sound like an emotion, but this happiness is way more than an emotion. This discipline is hard and uncomfortable, and sometimes I don't feel happy when I have to get disciplined or when I have to do practice. I don't feel good. It doesn't feel nice to have to put in effort to stuff. I want things to be easy. But that's not the reality. See, this happiness is a state of being. Emotions change and are fleeting. If it was conditional on ourselves, we'd lose the happiness almost instantly. But this is a condition that we have in Christ, being blessed. And it is so much harder to feel bogged down when we know we live a life where we are showered with grace. That in the hardest moments, we can turn to God for strength. And how amazing is it that God comes to meet us when our strength runs short, that we can truly, truly rely on him. And for all the best reasons, it doesn't matter how you feel. You are blessed in your discipline. That is the reality for the Christian. We just get to live and practice discipline and know our Father is near. We live in a reality of joy and nearness to the Father. And so, as we live in this joy that is being blessed, naturally we're going to want to do something with it, right? I can imagine we want to sit on the stockpile of grace and hoard it to ourselves, because that's not really acting like Christ, right? See, imagine a kid who all year has been begging his parents to be Spider-Man. Like if you ask a kid what they want to grow up to be, some say fire truck, some say whatever. Say this kid wants to be Spider-Man or whatever, right? It's all he wants. So along comes his birthday, and he gets a Spider-Man costume. And he's so psyched. He's running around the house, running on the walls, passes out probably out of excitement, wakes up, passes out again, does all that. What's the first thing that this kid is going to do? He's going to put on the Spider-Man costume. He's going to act like Spider-Man. He's going to whip around the house and fight the bad guys and save the city. This kid has been waiting for the costume. And now that he has the Spider-Man costume, it's too good to not put on and to not save the city. And the Christian knows that living in the state of being blessed is too good to not do anything with it. We are called to genuinely live and care for the people around us. So as we kind of land the plane, let's read James 1:26 and 27. If anyone thinks he is religious without controlling his tongue, his religion is useless and he deceives himself. Pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. See, point number 3 is that Christians who fight their apathy show that they care. As we live out our faith and fight against our apathy, we have to put it into action, and that results in care. Out of discipline comes a changed life that shows care. If we actively care, it's really hard to be apathetic, right? Our discipline to stay transfixed on Jesus changes the way we live in a beautiful and noticeable way to the people around us. And how is that noticeable? Because if I just stand around and don't really do anything, nobody would know. If I'm just standing in line at Pancheros, nobody's going to know that I care about Christ, that I care about my faith. But it's the minute that we start talking that people get to notice and understand more about what we love, what we do, and who we are. And so first we have to take care of our tongues. If anyone thinks he is religious without controlling his tongue, his religion is useless and he deceives himself. James loves talking about the tongue, it seems like, and I think if it's, he keeps bringing it up, it's probably important. The tongue can super easily be a wrecking ball in relationships with friends if left unchecked. It can do some serious damage, or it can be really awesome and praise the Lord, The way you speak colors the perspective people have on you and what you love and what you do and who you are. Because if we're going around, being loose-lipped, if we're cussing like a sailor, being a little nasty, we're not going to reflect Christ very well, you know? We'd be pretty rotten people. Nobody would want to hang out with us if we were kind of nasty. It would show that we don't truly love Jesus. Because when we're adopted into the family of God, called his sons and daughters, we speak like it, because that's who we are. If we want people to know what we love, what we do, who we are, we should be mindful about what we say. What we say is the evidence that discipline has taken effect, that you've cared enough about your faith to not be complacent in your actions, that you care enough to put what Jesus would want you to say and do over what your flesh really wants to say and do. But the way we care doesn't end with us, because again, evidence of our care should be evident to the people around us. And remember from earlier, a big way of fighting our apathy is doing. We become doers in Christ. We do the Christian thing. Finally here, James is going to show us what that looks like and what it can do for the people around us. Pure and undefiled religion, a faith that is pleasing to God, is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. See, in that time, the husband and the father of the family was the primary caregiver, and he provided a lot of the land and security, the finances, et cetera, all the boring stuff, I think. But if he died, bad news bears for the widow and bad news bears for the kids. They're left destitute, and the orphan is entirely helpless without their parents. They have nothing. I don't know an orphan that sends itself to law school. They'd be pretty helpless. They need to be taught what to do. These are some of the most needy and vulnerable people in society. And James is calling us to go to the needy and care for them. And I don't know what that looks like in your life. I don't know who you know, because I don't know too many orphans or widows or whatever. But I know that we know somebody who has a need. I know that we can see somebody who's, standing alone somewhere, who's looks like they're having a tough time. I don't know what that looks like in your life. But you can find at least one person to go to them, to be their friend, to show that you care for them, that they're not unnoticed. And by doing this, we have a faith that is pleasing to God, one that acts and one that doesn't revel in what the world offers. It is a faith unstained. It's not distracted by the first sin that the world offers up. Because if we're distracted, we're not going to care. We're not going to notice the person standing alone. See, our lived out faith looks like how Christ lived. A lot of Jesus' ministry was with the vulnerable and lowly. Christ went to them and showed compassion. And it is so good that we have Christ, our loving God who met us in our lowly state. He showed us compassion, and he died for us on the cross so that we may have life. So we can hear all this, read all this, sit here maybe not along. But if we really want to fight our apathy, we need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, is our faith pleasing to God? Or is it lukewarm, apathetic? Does it look like I don't care? Do we just sit on all this grace and mercy we're shown and just nod our heads along? I hope tonight we understand the weight of faith and how important it is to live out our faith. That for people to see Christ, we have to live as Christ. We have to look at our teacher, learn from our teacher, slowly be conformed to the likeness of our teacher. Would you pray with me? Father, I just ask first and foremost for strength to act. It can be so hard to get the let out sometimes. I pray that you would just spur us on to action, to seeing, open our eyes to who needs to be shown care. Also that we would have patience to look intently into the word, not look away, not get uncomfortable, but to just sit and meditate in the truths that you give us. And that we would understand our need for grace, and that you give grace freely to those who ask. So I pray that we would just ask for it, because it's readily available. And thank you for saving us, that in this new life that you've called us to, on the new self we put on, we can do all this. And you are near to us when we do all these things.